Bayo was so furious that Shade was wasting his precious time. They had a wedding to attend, and Bayo did not like to be kept waiting. He yelled out for his wife Shade, who rushed out of the bedroom to inform him that she was ready. Ready to do what exactly? To win an Mbeke beauty contest or to visit the zoo to see your fellow animals? He asked Shade, who looked at him shocked, wondering what she had done wrong to deserve such level of insult from him. Have you taken a good look at yourself in the mirror? Are you expecting me to walk with you dressed like that? He asked Shade, whose face was now buried in shame. Bayo hissed angrily at her and called his side chick Bimbo, who he pleaded with to get ready as they both had a wedding to attend. Shade stood there frozen, unable to believe what had just happened. Her heart was so heavy as she watched Bayo walk out on her to go pick up his side chick. Shade looked down at her dress, the one and only dress Bayo had ever gotten for her. This was shortly after they got married, when Bayo was still deeply in love with her, before he made so much money and changed to a man that Shade could no longer recognize. Now, he barely looked at her or even acknowledged her presence or feelings. Shade stood there, wondering what she had ever done wrong to warrant this level of hatred from her husband, who on several occasions refused to give her money to buy new clothes. Whenever she approached him for some money, Bayo would ask her why she was being too materialistic and demanding. At a point, Shade, seeing that her husband was not willing to give her some money, suggested that she gets a job to enable her earn some money of her own, but Bayo warned her sternly never to talk to him again about work. No wife of mine will be seen serving another man or woman, all in the name of a job. I am the only man that you will ever serve or answer to. Is that clear? He said to Shade, who zeroed her mind about securing any kind of job. Her husband was so tight-fisted and harsh when it came to her, although he spent the bulk of his money and time with his side chick Bimbo, who he never hesitated to buy expensive clothes and shoes for. Bayo did not stop there, as he put Bimbo on a weekly allowance and never failed to shower her with gifts and other surprises. Bimbo was living the life that Shade could only dream about, despite being his legally married wife. She went on expensive dates with Bayo and even accompanied him to public functions as his plus one. People who didn't know Bayo so well believed that Bimbo and Bayo were married. Some even referred to her as his wife, and Bayo never disputed this fact in public. Not a lot of people knew who Shade was, not even his friends, who never saw them together in public. This was because Bayo never took his wife out in public or introduced her to his friends. Shade was like an embarrassing secret that he hid away and always wanted to remain hidden. When he told her that they were going out for a wedding, Shade was so delighted and looked forward to their first time out as husband and wife in over 5 years. Her entire being was filled with joy, not knowing that Bayo did all he did just to humiliate her and trample on her self-esteem. She returned to her room sad, knowing that her husband was currently out with his side chick instead of her. Her maid Titi, who overheard all that transpired earlier that morning, walked up to her in her room to comfort her. She could not sit down and watch her anguish in pain without doing anything about it. She knew how kind and compassionate her madam had been to her since she lost her parents a few years ago. Shade never made her feel like a maid, but treated her like a younger sister and shared the little that she had with her. Titi reassured Shade that everything would be fine, and although Shade found it hard to believe, the reassurance went a long way in calming her spirit. Shade stayed up all night, waiting for her husband, who did not return because he was in the arms of his side chick, who convinced him to sleep over at hers. Shade had never been this heartbroken in her entire life. Not only did her husband humiliate and insult her, not caring about her feelings, he decided to spend the night away from home with his mistress. By morning, Bayo returned home and Shade confronted him to know why he never returned the previous night, and Bayo informed her that she had no right to question his decisions. Who do you think you are, this woman, to stand before me and question me? Have you taken a good look at yourself? Even your maid dresses better than you disgusting woman. Get out of my sight before I puke, he said to Shade as he walked out on her, not caring about how his words would affect her. Shade could not believe that her husband could belittle her in such a way. She went into her room and locked the door. Shade sat on the bed staring blankly at the walls as tears poured down her eyes. Her thoughts spiraled, replaying every hurtful word Bayo had thrown at her. How had things come to this? She had married a man she believed loved her, but now it felt like she was just an inconvenience in his life. Titi, hearing the door shut, knew that something was terribly wrong. She knocked softly on the door. Madam, it's me. Please let me in. At first, Shade did not respond, but after a few moments, she quietly unlocked the door, allowing Titi inside. Madam, you can't let him destroy you like this. You deserve better. You've always been kind and patient. Don't let this break you, Titi said as she encouraged Shade to reclaim her life. I don't even recognize myself anymore, Shade said to Titi, who knew all the sacrifices that her madam had made for her marriage, her dignity, happiness, and self-worth, crushed by a man who did not care if she existed or not. Titi's heart ached for her madam. She had seen how Shade transformed from the once vibrant and happy woman to a shadow of her former self, and knew that if nothing was done soon, her madam would fall into deep depression. Madam, I think it's high time you think about yourself for once and reclaim your lost victory, Titi said to Shade, who felt a sense of hope wash over her. Where will I start from? Shade asked Titi, who advised her to find a job. A job? Which company will hire me in this state? She asked Titi, who reminded her of the job offer she got from a company so many years ago. Why don't you start from there? Titi said to Shade, who knew that there was no way that the company would accept her after so many years. Shade sat in silence for a moment, absorbing Titi's words. The thought of going back to that company after all these years felt overwhelming, but deep down, she knew Titi was right. She couldn't keep living like this, allowing herself to be degraded by the man who once promised to love and cherish her. I need to fight for myself before I drown in sadness, she thought to herself as she thanked Titi for always being there for her. However, her husband's continuous threats and warnings echoed in her mind, terrifying her as she wondered how she would do this, knowing that her husband would never approve of anything that would ever benefit her life. She sat there confused as she pondered on what to do. The next day, Shade was sitting in the living room when she heard a knock on the door. She rushed to check who it was and met a man who came looking for Bayo. Shade invited the man into their home and went in to call her husband, who was shocked to see his friend in his home. Is she your wife? The man asked Bayo, who shook his head and said that she was one of his maids. My wife traveled on a business trip as usual, but she would be home in a week, Bayo said as he commanded Shade to bring some drinks for his friend and himself. Shade had never been this humiliated in her entire life. Shade had never been this humiliated in her entire life. She felt her heart sink at Bayo's words. His denial cut deeper than any insult he had hurled at her before. She was reduced to nothing in front of this stranger, a nameless maid in her own home. Her hands trembled as she poured the drinks, but she forced herself to remain calm. She couldn't break down again, not in front of this strange man. After serving the drinks, she quietly excused herself and went back to the bedroom, which was now her sanctuary of pain. She leaned against the wall and allowed the tears to fall freely, her body shaking as she sobbed uncontrollably. How did I let my life come to this? She asked herself, knowing that she deserved better than this. Titi's words continued to echo in her mind, filling her with the courage to stand up for herself for once, to take a leap of faith, to do the things that she had always wanted to do for all these years. You deserve better. The phrase repeated in her head, louder and louder, until it became a mantra. For years, she had sacrificed herself, her dreams, and her happiness for this marriage. But now, the veil was lifting and she was beginning to see things clearly. She walked up to her wardrobe and brought out some documents, which were now covered in dust. She went through the documents and picked out the job offer she got years ago, before Bayo had forbidden her from working. She had kept it as a reminder of the life she had once dreamed of and the independence she had so desperately yearned. The next morning, Shade got dressed in the old dress that Bayo despised so much. But this time, she wasn't wearing it for him. She was wearing it for herself. She walked out of the house with her head held high, ignoring Bayo's mocking glance as he sat in the living room. I'm going to get a job, she said to Bayo, who laughed at her dress and asked her who would hire a pathetic woman like her, dressed in such a pathetic dress. If no one has ever told you, that dress makes you look like a maid, he said as he burst out in laughter and said to her that once she is done fooling and embarrassing herself, she should not bother returning because he won't be the one to accept that which has been rejected by all. Shade paused for a moment. She could not let her husband's words get to her at this time as she summoned all the courage and walked out of the door, ready to grab her destiny in her hands. She knew her dress was not the best, but that was the best dress that she had. Ignoring her husband's laughter, Shade walked out of the house as she set out for the address written in the job offer letter that she got. Shade arrived at the company and was told that they had no opening. She could see that she was being judged by the way that she dressed and tried to explain to the lady at the reception that she got a job offer from the company a few years ago, but the lady laughed and said that there was no way that the company would ever offer a woman like her a job, knowing the caliber of people that worked there. Shade immediately handed over her job offer to the young woman, who opened her eyes in shock and told her to have a seat. Shade was so confused and wondered what was happening. She sat there quietly, waiting for the woman to return and noticed how the other staff of the company were staring at her. After a few minutes, a young man named Deji approached her and asked her to follow him. Shade, still trying to understand what was happening, followed him to a very beautiful office. Please sit, he said to Shade, who sat quietly and waited for him to speak. She sat quietly as she stared at the man, who looked excited to see her. We have waited for you for so long, he said to Shade, who could not believe her ears. Does it mean that I have a job? Shade asked him excitedly as the young man revealed to her that she had always had a job. This company is yours, madam, and I have been managing it for you for all these years. Shade could not understand what he was talking about. Mine? How so? She asked with a confused look on her face as the young man went on to inform her that the ownership of the company was signed over to her a few months ago. When the company sent you a job offer all those years ago, our boss was shocked to hear that you never showed up. It was so concerning, knowing how good the salary and other incentives were and how people dreamed of working in our company. It was not normal to see a person receive a job offer from the company and decline, so our boss decided to investigate the reason why you never showed up. During the course of the investigation, it was revealed that your husband was the reason why you never accepted the job offer. Our boss was so devastated to learn that you were being restricted by your husband, who refused to allow you to work or have any form of independence. Our boss was so sympathetic towards you, knowing the potential you had. So in a bid to help you, our boss made the ultimate decision to gift you the company as a way of securing your future and giving you the freedom that you so deserved. Shade had never been this confused in her entire life. How can someone gift another an entire company? She questioned herself, trying to wrap her head around all that she had just heard. Can I please know who this kind person is? Shade asked Deji. He informed her that their former boss was waiting for her in her office. They walked together, and Shade could not wait to meet the kind person who gifted her the company. They arrived at the office, and Shade caught sight of Titi, her maid, who was standing next to a woman that she had never met before. Shade stood there confused, trying to understand what Titi was doing in the company and what role she had to play in all of this. Titi smiled at her and apologized for not telling her all this while. What Shade did not know was that Titi was the one sent by the owner of the company to figure out why she had turned down their job offer. Titi, for all these years, has been reporting everything that has been happening in Shade's life to her boss, who decided to sign over the company to Shade to secure her future. The owner of the company, Mrs. Alakija, was an extremely wealthy woman with numerous companies littered all over the country. She suffered intense abuse from her husband in the past, and Shade reminded her so much about herself. She decided to help Shade in the way she wished someone had helped her during her own time. Mrs. Alakija walked towards Shade with a warm smile. "Hello, Shade," she said softly. "You may not know me, but I've known about you for years. Titi has been my eyes and ears in your home, and I've heard about all the pain and sacrifice you've endured in your marriage. I see so much of myself in you, which is why I made the decision to give you this company. I know what it's like to be silenced and ignored by the person you love, but you deserve better than that, and I want you to have the freedom to live the life you've always dreamed about." Shade could not utter a word. She was so speechless as she tried to comprehend the magnitude of Mrs. Alakija's gesture. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized that someone had been watching over her all this time, caring for her when she felt most alone. "I don't know how to thank you," Shade said as tears poured down her eyes. "Who could have ever thought that something like this could happen to me?" she asked herself as she continued to thank Mrs. Alakija, who informed her that she now had the power to do whatever that she wanted. Mrs. Alakija granted Shade access to a personal account filled with hundreds of millions, and Shade could not believe her eyes. The account was in her name, and Shade could not believe that she was now a millionaire. Armed security guards were now given to her to escort her wherever she went, and several luxury cars were now at her disposal. Shade could not believe all that was happening. She pinched herself severally to ensure that she wasn't dreaming, and Titi smiled happily at her and assured her that it wasn't a dream. Shade in that moment was transformed into a woman that she never knew existed. Her clothes, shoes, hair were all changed, and Shade could not wait to return home. Titi and herself got into the car and were driven home by her personal driver and security detail. As Shade's luxurious car pulled into the driveway, she could not believe it. The transformation she had undergone in just one day was almost too much to process. She glanced at Titi, who sat beside her, filled with joy. The woman who had once been her maid was now her closest ally, someone who had played a critical role in changing her life forever. When they arrived home, Bayo was lounging in the living room, completely unaware of the whirlwind of change that had just taken place in Shade's life. He was still the same arrogant man, expecting everything to revolve around him. Hearing the car pull up, Bayo glanced out of the window, confused by the sight of the luxurious convoy parked outside. He had no idea what was happening. As Shade stepped out of the car, her new clothes, shoes, and overall aura left him speechless. She looked like a completely different woman, radiant, powerful, and confident. Titi followed behind, standing with the security guards who lined up in front of the house. Bayo's jaw dropped as he tried to comprehend the scene before him. He watched in confusion and shock as Shade entered the living room, her steps graceful and assured, like a woman who now knew her worth. "Who are these people?" Bayo asked, still trying to understand what was happening. Shade looked at him calmly, no longer affected by his insults or arrogance. "These people," she said with a smile, "are my security detail. I have been given control of a multi-million-dollar company. Ever heard of Lakaj? Bayo froze, knowing that Lakaj was one of the top companies in the country. I now own Lakaj, Bayo, she said, as Bayo laughed at her mockingly and urged her to wake up from her slumber. What are you talking about? What kind of nonsense is this? You, a millionaire? Are you out of your mind? Bayo asked, as Titi stepped forward and showed him the news publication, which detailed the new ownership of Lakaj. Bayo's smile disappeared as the gravity of the situation began to sink in. He looked at Sade, his eyes wide with confusion and fear, as he asked her how this was possible. Sade narrated the entire story to him, and Bayo could not believe his ears. For the first time in his life, Bayo felt so vulnerable. His wife, whom he had belittled, humiliated and hidden away, was now more powerful than he could ever imagine. His bravado crumbled as he realized the consequences of his actions. You can't leave me, Bayo stammered as he began to panic. We are married, Shadi, and we have a life together, he said, as Shadi smiled and asked if truly they were married. When was the last time you took me out in public or even introduced me to your friends? Or am I no longer your maid? She asked Bayo, who stood there, ashamed of all that he had done. In that moment, his phone rang and he realized that it was his side chick Bimbo. What is it? Why are you disturbing my number? He asked Bimbo, who could not believe that Bayo was speaking to her in such a way. I am HIV positive, she said to Bayo, who she informed to get himself checked. You stupid man. I hope you rot in hell for cheating on your beautiful wife, she said as she warned Bayo never to look for her again. Bayo stood there frozen, his phone still in his hand. The weight of Bimbo's words hit him like a truck and he couldn't believe what he had just heard. HIV positive? How? Why? His mind raced with questions as panic quickly took over. Shade, noticing the sudden change in Bayo, asked to know what the problem was. What's the matter? She asked calmly, watching as Bayo began to crumble in front of her. Bayo's hands shook as he dropped the phone to the floor. He stuttered, unable to form a coherent sentence, but Shade did not need him to say anything. She knew somehow that this was karma, making its first appearance in his life. You look like you've seen a ghost, Shade said, as a text message arrived her phone, which read that her husband had HIV and that she should get herself checked. You have HIV? Shade asked Bayo, who began to plead for her forgiveness. Shade, please, I made a mistake. I didn't know what I was doing. Please don't leave me now, he said as he burst out in tears and began to cry uncontrollably. We can fix this. We are still married. I still love you, he pleaded with his voice filled with desperation. Shade looked down at Bayo, her heart torn between anger, pity, and remnants of love she once had for him. Shade in that moment did not know what to make of the information. Her husband and herself had not been intimate in almost 2 years, and Shade was so grateful for this, knowing that Bimbo only became his side chick a year ago. She could see the fear in his eyes, the realization of how far he had fallen. For the first time in years, Bayo wasn't the arrogant man who belittled her at every given opportunity. He was now vulnerable, terrified, and desperate. She remained silent for a moment, allowing the weight of the situation to settle over both of them. Bayo's sobs echoed in the living room, and it was clear that his life had just been shattered. But as Shade watched him, something stirred within her. Compassion. Despite everything, she knew she couldn't abandon the man that she had once loved so deeply. Not now, when he needed her the most. He was now HIV positive, and Shade did not know how to navigate this with their marriage. However, she was willing to give him all the help that she could, whilst trying to decide on how things would go. Bayo, in that moment, regretted all his actions. He was willing to accept whatever decision that Shade made about their marriage, knowing that he brought everything upon himself. In the moment that Shade's life transformed for the better, Bayo's once blissful life went to ruins, showing him that nothing in life was permanent. The woman who he looked down on and put down at every given opportunity was now the woman that he dreamed to have in his corner. The woman who was now admired by all and spoken about by men who he could not even stand in their midst. That was how Shade became a well-known and respected woman in the society. Whilst her husband battled with HIV, she forgave him and provided him with all the support that he needed. But Bayo's life never remained the same again. The lesson to be learned from this story is that you should learn to treasure the people in your life and be faithful to them. Treat them with respect and never let pride blind you to the value of those who always stand by you. Life is unpredictable and the tables can turn when you least expect it. Today's success can easily become tomorrow's downfall, but those who live with kindness, humility, and love will always find their way back to happiness no matter the circumstances. Learn to forgive others of their wrong because no one is perfect. However, never forget that the consequences of our actions are just as real. Value the people you love and never take them for granted, for you may never get a second chance to make things right. I hope you enjoyed the story.